is Motivation. I'm Lori Joy Kingwell.
And I'm Chrissy Van. We're two dreamers on two wheels inspired by our community.
And celebrating the voices we're just lucky enough to discover along the ride. So if not already, like, subscribe, follow along, do what you gotta do to not miss an episode.
Do you ever have a ride planned that all of a sudden goes in a completely different direction that you planned? This is one that you worked on with your pals, you had the route, and then you get together and you decide maybe today's not the day to do that ride. Well, that's exactly what happened with this episode of the Motovation Podcast. If you've joined us for several, you know we go off-roading with Richelle of True Grit Moto, and it's a lot of laughs. And that's exactly what we were planning on recording on a day Richelle joined us, and you could sense the shift in energy. Richelle's recently been going through a breakup, and as the old adage goes, breaking up is hard to do. Recording audio in a cafe is as well. How about those fine grinding beans in the background? See, even this intro's still going a little off-road, as is this episode, which is focusing all about breakups. Not just in relationships, but ones that we have with friendships, ones that we have with careers. We get into the nitty-gritty, and we appreciate Richelle so much for speaking to us during a time that she's feeling pretty vulnerable. This is the Motovation. Hello.
Money.
Oh, Richelle.
Welcome to Toilet Talks with Chrissy.
Welcome.
Today we're going to talk about the fact that everybody poops and it's okay.
Yeah, this is Shoot the Shitter. Welcome.
Followed by sometimes it hurts sometimes. Just squeeze.
Followed by you got to get the bum gun. It'll be better.
The bum gun. George.
Richelle, I miss you. I'm so excited to be away and actually see you live in person.
You guys, I'm like so hyped for this. I'll preface this conversation. Meg and I broke up.
How are you?
How you doing?
Bummed.
Yeah.
Bummed. It's like you go through relationships, obviously, and you're like, well, this is tough. I think this isn't working. But when you love somebody and, it's like we've had conversations and it's kind of like it was the right thing to do, but it's almost harder because we were both like, this is the right thing to do, and you like hug. And then we spent like an entire evening talking about all the good times, and it was quite sweet.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So it went really well, but it hasn't quite hit me until we were finally like, okay, maybe we should stop texting every day. That would be a good move.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, let's do that. Let's stop texting. And then, so it's like this, it's like we're, ooh. But in my heart every day, I'm like, it was the right decision.
Yeah.
Because, it's just not everybody's meant. And I just don't think necessarily that. Maybe not right now in this moment in time.
The heart healing's hard when it's like that too, because it's such a beautiful thing. Like you're grateful that it's like that, but hate would be an easier emotion. If there's anger, it's almost in the moment easier to work with. But I think this will bring both like more peace to both your hearts that it's like this, it like preserves the care that was there.
Without a doubt. Because people that's why they usually wait till things get so volatile, or they wait till because it's one of those things where, because it is such a hard decision when you're making it out of like knowing and love, and people hold on because they're like, well, no, that hurts too much because I still love them. And so they wait till they hate them. And then there's all this junk and repair on the other side where you just kind of get to go because you guys made the decision from a healthy space and from a loving space. It still hurts, but there's not this additive of all this other junky emotions or, little mini traumas that you put each other through that you have to unpack as well, sort of thing, because you hold on too long. Right.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, but it hurts from like a really pure place and a healthy place of like, man, I love that person. And it is super sad that it turns out they're not my person.
Totally. Yeah, it was so well said from both of you guys. It's kind of beautiful. You're right. It's like, damn. But okay, yeah, we're working towards a good relationship that's something new for the future.
How have you
So
been doing with yourself? Because I know that you were like introducing a lot of really good foundations that were feeling good for you. Are you able to keep a little bit of that up?
yeah, like Mexico taught me a lot, of like just like personal growth and experience and boundaries. And it's like you put yourself in this place kind of, and also me and Megan were kind of a little on a bit of a break, sort of. So lots of reflecting and lots of taking care of myself, which also gave me lots of time to think about business and friends and finances. And coming back into Vancouver, it was basically just like go time. And I've been working just consistently. I do have an assistant now, Micah, and she's been so helpful. So like, I think I'm staying on that same path of making sure that my boundaries are being met. I feel very proud of how me and Megan ended things. Just like you guys said, it's kind of like we didn't wait until it was volatile. We just did it right then and there. And I feel like I've never actually really experienced like a full, successful, really amicable breakup and it go well into the weeks. Like it's been about 2 weeks now. And overall, I'm actually like quite proud of the things that I'm doing. I didn't at first, like what in my like, early 30s, I was like, oh, I'm really getting life. I feel quite woke. And now at 35, I'm like, I would think I just was understanding that I needed to be woke back then, and now I'm kind of like, oh, I'm getting it. It can be very, very painful, very hard, very scary. And you go through it and then you're like, okay, that was really fucking hard to do. Especially like setting a boundary for yourself. Oh my God. But man, it really pays off. And I feel more calm during this breakup than I have any other breakup where I don't feel like I'm destitute almost. Mm-hmm. It feels almost like I still really love my space and I still really love myself. And I have this amazing friend group and I have this passion. And so I'm very thankful to be where I am right now. And I think it took a lot of hard work to get to where I am, where I've filled my surroundings with things that support if and when the heart gets broken. So that feels pretty fucking cool.
That was so beautiful.
Yeah, we're gonna change this episode into just a regular. Should we actually just talk about breakups? Like make this off road about like I'm like I feel like there's so many people that could that are listening that are either in these situations, have been in these situations, or will be in these situations in the future in the dating world that is very difficult now, and especially at our age where it gets a lot of our friends have spoken to here in Vancouver and elsewhere that I have that are in the dating pool that are feeling like it's those additives of like staying in something that maybe isn't right for them because it's one of those things where it's like, do I really want to start again? Do I really want to go back and see? And then, friends of mine that are also just like, I just need to take a full on break. But then you also feel, like all the things, Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, there's so much that I can.
Conversation is really relevant.
It's so relevant. It's so funny you say that because like there was a girl that came to dinner last night and she's been going through a divorce for the last year. And then, a lot of customers that I have, they're going through either like a death or a breakup or a divorce and I don't know if it's the time of year or, like the age in which we're all at, but it feels like a lot of people are trying to figure out, okay, that one thing isn't working, or I don't feel comfortable with my surroundings, which means that my dog's death was a lot harder because my partner isn't supportive, or my business, I have to work 9 to 5 in a cubicle, you're right. This is so relevant and it's so big. And if I could really reflect on this relationship that I had with Megan, it was the most adult one because we really, right from day one, it was almost kind of like, well, there's this fire here. And then suddenly day 2, it was like, oh, we have a bit of a red flag here. And then, oh, bit of a red flag. And we kept going through these hurdles and they weren't small ones, but we were trying to communicate and make something happen. And I feel like we really went down this beautiful, like almost like a workbook. Like, okay, I have this issue, she has this issue. We tried to figure out this solution, and that solution was the most probable to make this relationship work, and it didn't. But we tried. Okay, let's try the next thing. And some things we definitely overcame, and it made us just that much more connected. So if we do make this off-road about the, breakups and how that works out, I would absolutely love to share my experience on that. Cause I think even in my later years, I'll come back and look at this podcast and probably listen to it and be like, man, that was a good one. It was a good start off.
Let's do this. Let's just do this as an episode. What do you think, Chrissy?
I love when organic life happens. I mean, obviously I've been with the same person for a very long time, but when you were speaking to the different types of breakups and loss, like one that comes to mind to me is when, and I've talked about it on the podcast before, but when you have old friendships that don't align. And I think those are really difficult ones to go through as well, where you're not necessarily breaking something off, but it's that realization that you're actually not good for each other or propelling each other forward. Because that would be the closest thing to a breakup grief I've felt. And it happened after I'd moved out here, and you're not understanding, there's no communication almost or acknowledgement in what's transpiring.
Right.
And you end up really lost in that. And at the same time, it's like so much growth opportunity within it, because I had that happen. I moved out here. I had a really close friend. Like, we were quite literally inseparable for most of our lives, but honestly, we're such different people. And there was just a lot not necessarily working in the dynamic of what a supportive friendship, or what I know my adult friendships to be. And what was really cool is that, as I tell you, like, I actually went through like a grieving process. I couldn't understand like what was happening. And I knew like it was slipping through my fingers, and yet no side was talking about it straight up, because that was definitely a growth thing that I had to get to. And it would have been last year. We actually met face to face and had like an actual, like, we are adults here. Let's put it on the table and talk about this. And it was such a difficult conversation, because there were both things that came up about each other that never feels good to hear, especially when we hear a critique of ourselves that we are maybe slightly aware of or not aware of, or the minute they say it, you see it, and you know that you need to receive that and honor that, because that's something for you to actionably work on. But I will say there was such beauty in being able to have those conversations. Like when you're speaking to that experience with Megan, how it was these little flags that you had, and you were like, if we want to get here, this is the solution. There's so much that happens out of those tough conversations. Like, it really is the kindest thing. And I think, was it Brene Brown, Lori? You had a fabulous quote, and this is going back so many episodes. To be clear is kind, to be unclear is unkind. And that's exactly what I think of when it comes to conversations with relationships. When both parties, you can feel it if it's not being said, and it's not kind, because I think that's where a lot of anxieties or quote unquote spiraling can happen.
What do you think, Richelle, when you said that, like, you've been in such a reflective state with it all, and how, well, I guess you already spoke to how this feels different on the other side of it than it did, like you feel more centered, you feel more connected to self, versus if it got volatile in the past, or you're at that place where it's almost like you dislike the other person, or you have so much animosity or resentment or all those things, which I don't mean to put words into your mouth. I just mean like I've been there in breakups. I think everyone's been there at some point in time when we've allowed it to go too long because we're holding on to just one more good minute, or to not being without that person. Like, I remember actually even writing in my journal at one point with my ex that I was with for 3.5 years. And I just wrote, I know I need to end this, but I just can't let go of the idea of, I just want one more kiss, hug, memory, laugh because like we did get on so well, but there was so much jealousy on his part, and there was so much, disconnect on my part, and all the things. And so it was just such highs and lows. It was a very unhealthy relationship ultimately. But like, if we were friends, we were just like the best buddies. So it was like I didn't want to lose my best buddy.
Yeah.
But as a partner, it was, like I was just chipped down to nothing in so many ways. I was a shell of myself, and you hold on. So you hold on for that one more feel good memory, because that once you let go, they're done. But then you keep doing it, right? It's that like kind of that same part of us that's like, I'll work out on Monday. But then like Monday comes and you're just like, no, I don't, it never ends. So,
Yeah.
and then you get so broken down. That's when you finally end it, because this is worse than the one more hug or kiss or whatever. You don't even want to hug the person.
Yeah.
But so we've all been there. I think not all, but most of us have been there, right? To an extent. But I guess, so my question would be for you of like, in all the reflections, what would you say has like been 2, 3, however many you want really, of the biggest things, that aha moments that have come out of this in taking this time for yourself to like step out of it at a healthier phase than the latter, which is essentially the unhealthy part?
Yeah. This is a really good question. It's, every one person is so unique, and my uniqueness for personal is I've had a lot of loss in life, a lot of really close deaths, father, best friend, grandmother, dog, like the list kind of goes on a little bit. And I think my body started creating these triggers / also ways of coping, and it gave me this really short-term memory kind of, where in any given moment, in any given person, you'll slowly over time figure out, oh, okay, I see what my body's doing there. It's trying to save me a little, or I'm recognizing something new about myself. And that's the one thing I recognized about myself, is that in any one relationship, I would so quickly forget about what was going on that was bad, because I just wholeheartedly didn't want to lose that person, like I had lost so many. Because you don't just love that person out of the blue, like you're saying, they're a best friend, or Chrissy, it is a friend, and friends and relationships, in my opinion, are exactly the same. The only thing you don't do with friends, not all of them, maybe, is get romantic with them. But so when I think about because I have lost some pretty close friends recently as well over the past few years. And every life moment brings you to a place within yourself that says, okay, my body doesn't like that. My mind doesn't like that. Doesn't mean I'm a bad person. But if I now express to myself internally, oh, I didn't really like that, I didn't really feel comfortable with that, I'm going to assess it. And there's no right and wrong.
To be clear, Richelle, because you said lost, do you mean, you talked about losing earlier, your grandfather, your father and stuff, and then you said loss again, but do you mean just over the past couple of years, you've made the disconnect from? They haven't died.
They haven't died, no.
Right.
But
the friends you're speaking to, this is where you have recognized, in my body, in my mind, this doesn't feel good. I need to make some decisions around this friendship.
Yeah. So the loss in the beginning of life created something inside me that was allowing my basic instincts to go, like, you've lost before. And so my body would go, that person's doing something I don't really like, but I don't want to lose them in life, because death is so soon. It's so here. It's so near. So just love that person anyway, and screw your boundary. That's a human being, and they're here. So my body was going, no, that human's alive. Therefore, you should make sure that you stay connected. And it took me until over the past probably like 5 or 6 years to be like, actually, if somebody's coming into my life and we are connecting in such a way, but there's certain things that don't really align for me. Now, the way that I assess it, because it's happened so many times, because you'll meet a lot of people in life. Now I really dial it down and go, does that person add to my core values? Will they inhibit me in a way in life that I can't continue to live the way I want to live my life? Do they make me happy? Are our struggles, can we overcome the struggles that this friendship or this partnership is bringing? And the other key part is, do I want to be quick and just cut it off? Or do I really want to make efforts here to see if this relationship is something that will grow into something bigger and better? And so I think for myself, and especially coming out of that relationship with Megan, we really went above and beyond, because we actually were such good people together and separately. We absolutely wanted each other to be happy, and we knew that. And those were super good core values that it's really hard to look at each other and be like, oh, this just isn't, we just are on two different planets for one certain thing in that relationship. That, you know, when you think about a relationship, it's important that we meet on that. So maybe not a relationship, but maybe we can teeter into a really good friendship, and that will be a solid decision. And I feel more and more comfortable now when something comes into my life. And I've noticed it a couple times now where I felt like, oh, I feel a little uneasy about that. I'm just going to assess it, and I'm going to decide whether or not I want to continue this conversation or this friendship, even if it's just like, you know, a new client or a new friend that comes in, or whatever the situation is. I find that I'm assessing it a little bit more. I'm not being cutthroat about it. I'm just being like, is this for me? And then, you know, it's slowly, I'm hoping, I haven't quite gone through this scientific path yet, but I'm starting there, and it feels good. And I think that me and Megan was a really good example of how it can work out, as painful as it is. It's doable.
What I think so good of what you're addressing too is that a lot of times when you're supporting friends through breakups, and I'm sure the feeling on the other side, there's often people that sit there and go, what was wrong with me? Why wasn't I good enough? The self-audit and the self-talk can be so overwhelmingly negative towards self. Obviously, sometimes it can be projected into the other person, but that tends to be what happens. And I think there's a real beauty in realizing that there's billions of people on this planet, billions. Yeah. I've said it before. I did it the other day driving across the Canby Bridge, and it was just, the sun was shining and you see the reflection on every blue glass window on those condos. And I'm like, there are lives happening in every one of those boxes, minus the people that are basically home corporations that own millions of empty homes. Another conversation. Yeah. But it was just kind of this really beautiful realizing of they're all complex people with complex problems and different lived experiences. And so we can't necessarily have the expectation that everyone's going to be someone that fits in our life where we're at. And one of my favorite, I don't even know if it's necessarily a quote, but that whole people come into your lives as a reason, a season, or forever. And when you look at relationships that you've had with different people throughout your life, I really see like a lot of the ones that maybe it didn't work out or you just naturally drift apart. The reason, you almost always can see where you grew. And therefore it goes back to what I originally said, where anyone that's going through this and has that negative self-tape playing, it's not anything wrong with the individual or the person. It's just a misalignment, how you were saying, in maybe values in that moment, or trajectory, or growth ideals. And if you're able to kind of take away a lesson, work through like the pain of the experience first, because the emotion's so important to feel. But generally we're able to look back and take something, and then you add that into toolkit of who you are as a person coming out on the other side of it.
Yeah. And if I could comment on that, Chrissy, it's so important that you say that because me and Megan actually worked in so many other ways in communication, she actually taught me something about myself. And that one thing that, you know, there were several things, but the one important thing was I didn't realize that I had a really hard time being alone. And she was absolutely like, I love my alone time. And so I worked on that thinking I'm doing this for the relationship, not knowing that, oh, damn, I needed to do that for me. And I didn't know how bad it was. But if she hadn't done that, if she hadn't been so strong in her knowing that she loved her alone time and that maybe I needed to maybe be on that same path, if she hadn't had that hard conversation with me, I probably would feel today like I can't be in this apartment alone. And I didn't realize how bad it once was, but I worked on it during that entire relationship. So I'm sitting here, I'm sleeping alone at night. Well, now I got Lou, but you know, I feel absolutely fine being by myself. And that relationship taught me something new that I didn't know about myself. And it was a big one. So
I think that's it, right? Like all these relationships that come into our lives, we sometimes go, it worked or it didn't work. But that's not actually the point, whether it's a friendship or whether it's a romantic relationship or a family dynamic, whatever it is it's not a matter of, it's never as cut and dry as it worked and it doesn't work. As much as it's like, if it's in my life, it's in my life likely for a reason, whether it's to teach me something, whether it's to be a companion for life, whether it's to, you know, you're navigating this other human, which you said is complex, Chrissy, because we're all, you know, uniquely complex. And it's finding, yes, who works but sometimes it takes a bit. Sometimes it takes breaks. Like I have two examples, romantic and friendship, where that kind of like, if you love them, let them go. If they're meant to come back, they will. It was a prime example when we first started kind of like hanging out and hooking up, and we'd been friends since we were in high school. So we knew each other in that capacity, but you know, I was gone to college. He was gone to university. So, you know, we'd see each other once a year, maybe in the last 4 before this, we started hooking up. And when we were like, hey, let's date, I had realized that because I had only about 6 months ago gotten out of the relationship of 3.5 years. And I realized that I was in no shape to be in a relationship. But here's this guy that is like, you know, in every way fits the bill of like who I would love to, you know, date or spend life with. But I knew inside that I was going to fuck it up. I knew it. I knew I was going to cheat on him. I knew that I was just not in a state to take on the ability to be a good partner. And so I had to either cling to that and say, but I don't want to lose him. I don't want another person to find him in the meantime. And it was just like, if he's supposed, you have to trust, you have to allow, but you have to do your work on yourself, or else it's inevitable that this won't work anyways. So at least if you walk away, which I did, and everyone thought, you know, my friends and family were like, you nuts? What you doing? You nuts? It's like, and I was like, I know myself enough to know that this isn't where I'm meant to be. Not now. And if anything, this person's come into my life. And I once again, I remember the journal entries about it. I remember reading it to Dave years later. And I had said, and if nothing else, if this person doesn't come back into my life, then he's here to let me know that I need to get to work, and I need to work on my shit, and I need to heal myself so that when someone like this person comes into my life, then I can actually start to lean into real thriving relationships. Because right now it's an impossibility for me. And a year later, that's what happened. Super random events came about, and Dave came back into my life. And I was just like, this is crazy. Never thought that this would get a second chance. But because I was so honest with him too about this, he also, because he's one of those guys that like, he's kind of like, yeah, if you're not in, you know, I'm probably out. But because of the honesty of where I was at, he was still open because he respected why I was, you know, it wasn't, whereas
it was like so clear.
It was so clear. And he knew that it was coming from the right space that he stayed open. Year later, these events happen. Well, 17 years later, we've been together. If I wouldn't have taken that time, there's no way, I know without a doubt. Another example, friendship. One of my closest girlfriends in high school, like we were joined at the hip. When we graduated a couple of years later, we just couldn't get on the same page. It was like, no matter what I did, I was hurting her feelings of I wasn't there enough, even though I felt as though I was, but from her experience, I wasn't. And we were both going through our own world and we just couldn't connect. And it was starting to get where we were resenting each other. And I got to the point, I was about 22, 23 at the time. And I just said, I can't be the friend you need. And I'm constantly in a place where it's never good enough. I'm always falling short. I'm always falling flat. This doesn't feel good on my end. I don't think we should be in each other's lives at this point. And we had tried and had conversations before that. It wasn't really received well at the time. It was pretty intense when this parted at this time. Anyways, we went 8 years. And I would have dreams about like reuniting with her, like Chrissy, like you talked about, like it felt like a heartbreak, you know? But I reached out actually before my wedding and I said, I have no expectations of you reaching, like I've taken the time I needed to send this message, just know my door is always open. But essentially I was just like, you know, I will always have love for you. And if there's ever a time that you want to sit down and see where we're at, I'm so open. It wasn't until a year later that she messaged me back as well. And to wrap it all up, we ended up slowly starting to kind of touch base. And within a year, we were right back to where we began. And it was like how tight we were in high school, complete trust again. And actually, she was just here this past weekend visiting. And one of the things she said is something, and she's like, gosh, sometimes it makes me so sad because we missed 8 years of each other's lives and we didn't have to. And I'm like, yeah, but at the same token, that's where we were. That's how life panned out for us. And we did the best that we could where we were at, but that's what it looked like. And I said, I and you, and we know at the end of the day, we are just so thankful that we found our way back to one another. But truly, I feel like we were always meant to find our way back to one another. And there's also friendships that I've let go that I don't believe we'll ever find our way back to each other. And that's okay. You know, that's okay. Yeah. And people, you know, we were very close, but like, we're just not each other's people. But, you know, I think there's also that trust that you have to have as well, that if you feel in your gut that you really have to let go of that person and you really need to create space, you can trust that, like, if they're supposed to come back around or you're supposed to come back around to them, that like, as long as you guys are growing in the directions of your, you know, your higher selves, if you will, for lack of a better term, then life does beautiful things.
Well, and I think the biggest thing you highlight is that space for work on self, because it can be so easy to feel. And I mean, I can't speak from a place of being in this position, because obviously I've been in a relationship for a very long time. But I can understand it to a degree, because I think of my mom. She was widowed at 49 and watching her live through that. And so I have seen what loneliness looks like. And I've had a window into the glimpse of what that can mean for a person. And so, as I say, I can't speak from it from a personal understanding, nor am I trying to take ownership of that emotion, but I've witnessed it enough that I can understand why people would want to remedy that feeling by holding on to what is there, even when it's not working. And it's interesting because even for herself, you know, for her, she's always said, like, that was my great love. I always joke. And I said, well, you married for love, marry for money with a man that wants to buy my approval. But, you know, truthfully, she spent the last 20 years of her life as a very lonely woman. And my mom is a very vivacious woman, a very outgoing woman. And it took a lot of that. She's very closed, right? It's like she got very hurt and then the doors were shut and very closed. And it's been very fascinating to watch, especially as a child of a parent, because she has always been into doing the work in regards to getting the information. We know the types of books that we read can help propel us onto a path of personal growth. And so she was like the sponge of absorption of it. But doing the actual work that's where the walls would go right up, because she would hear something or read something that resonated so hard. She was kind of like, fuck you. What'd you say about me? Even if it was a text in a book kind of thing. And she ended up, now I can't remember what, I want to say Eckhart Tolle, but I might just be throwing a book name in my head.
No,
But
you're
there
right.
was one of them that she read, because I think I told you the story,
Yeah.
Lori, at the time.
You're right.
And it hit. So it was all about ego, etc. And it just stripped away every single layer. And it's been fascinating to watch, because now she's opened herself up. She plays pickleball 5 days a week. Every time I call her, she's got plans with Rose and plans with this person. And that was 20 years of a bit of stalling, and then a hard and fast dose of self-work. And then all of a sudden, the entire experience of her life has transformed. So a bit of a longer anecdote there on my behalf, but it's kind of that reminder of how important that work on self is, because then the right things that align with you do come. And it doesn't mean necessarily there'll be a thing of permanence. It could be a thing of transience that then elevates you to the next level. But just gripping on to things that don't work to avoid the feeling of the lonely or the dark, I just don't think works out for any party that's involved in that equation.
No, and every person's different. The timeline, Laura, yours 8 years, your mom 20 years. Everybody deals with it in a different timeline. I know my own mother is still in it. She won't leave it, and she's been with the same person for years. Like, I've got a brother and sister, and my sister's in her 20s now, and it's abusive. It's not healthy. My mom does not take care of herself, but she is an amazing, incredible woman. And I'm hoping at some point she will take action. But if she never does, it's just one of those things. Every one person deals with things differently in life, and everybody's got their 1 or 2 or 3 traumas that they're dealing with. And it's not easy, man. The world is so, it's like it's with you, but it's also kind of against you. And if I can shed any light towards an experience of what would be helpful, it would be make your surroundings that much more enjoyable. So that way that relationship or that friendship, if and when it needs to come to that end, it's going to be just that much easier to rest with yourself when you're surrounded by the things that give you peace and joy. And even just doing that is fucking hard. So, I think if, oh man, it's so funny because some people don't even know what they want to do with their work or with their friends or their job. Or some people are really dedicated. And so it's just it's so different out there. And I hear any one person that comes up and says, kind of going through this struggle. It's like, I hear you. I get it. Just do what you can with what you got, and start small. Start so small. Start with just getting up in the morning. One of my questions actually for our podcast today was, what is your morning routine? And I don't remember if I had already asked this before, but my morning routine has drastically changed over the years. It used to be getting up, get on my phone right away, kind of self-wallow in all the fun shit that everybody's doing, unfold the blankets and prepare for a daunting day. And that was still being self-employed because, life is stressful and you got bills to pay and work. And I went and saw a coffee reader. This lady was, I take it with a grain of salt sometimes, I'm 50-50 on the experience, but she just was like, you need to switch up your morning routine. And here's exactly what you're going to do. And she laid it on the line for me. And I've said it before on my Instagram. Instead of getting on my phone in the morning, I got up, I put my phone away. I didn't look at it. And I made my coffee. I took care of myself, brushed my teeth, washed my face. And before I had Lou, I went for a half an hour to a 1 hour walk. And that was doable for me. If it's not doable for somebody else, even just going outside and experiencing fresh air, giving your brain that moment to, sort it out and enjoy life for just a second before you stop yourself with work and the phone it really changed my mindset and the trajectory in which my day was going and helped me to enjoy my surroundings that much more. So my morning routine now really sets my day up, and changing that around made me also realize how much I needed that my whole life, which was kind of cool. So, start small with the enjoyments, even if it's a morning routine or whatever, it helps.
Yeah. And I think like what you said is so important in the sense of surrounding yourself with things that not only empower you, but remind you of who you are, like what makes you happy, your value systems, what brings you quality of life, what makes you feel like you're thriving. Because when you are in relationships, or when you are in a relationship that is challenging at that time, or is maybe not for you, or maybe it is for you, it's just in the challenging moment or a valley, whatever it is, it gives you much more clarity about that relationship when you have the other areas of your life in a higher frequency, in a more connected state, because then it creates more clarity in that challenging space, in that foggy space. Whereas if your outside world is at a disconnect, or you're not really sure, and you're kind of, flailing about, and you're not really getting those pieces, and it can be as simple as just that, the morning routine. And I say simple because you, one way or the other, you're doing something when you wake up in the morning. And so everyone that's just like, I don't have time for that. I'm like, yeah, you do. You have time to brush your teeth instead of open your phone. So like, get real clear about your BS excuses of why you're not doing some really just simple things. You open your window to breathe fresh air. That's less time than checking Instagram. You know what I mean? All those things. But it's such a game changer as far as moving things quicker and clearer when you've got certain things set up in your day, small things. They don't have to be big, but the smallest, and then build more. But that really helps, because when you're in that space, and that's when you end up clinging more and staying in it longer, because you're like, but I get dopamine hits here when I get kissed, when I get told I'm beautiful, when I get hugged, so you hold on that much more because you're not getting that feeling anywhere else. Yeah. So if you're getting that feeling elsewhere, it's filling up those parts of yourself, which is human connection, which is just self-care. And then you're not relying on another human in that relationship to fulfill that need. Because that's why also we end up sticking around way too fucking long, is because we're so disconnected from self that we don't even realize as we're relying on that feeling of connection on that person. So if they go, well, what the hell, where else am I getting it from? Because if I'm not, and so that's why I'm like, oh, please take that advice of morning routine.
We segued right into motivation maintenance. And I do really love that one, because I've noticed, even myself, basically, like, since after Belize, things have been a little topsy-turvy, and I have worked really hard to get my foundation so in line, because as we know, whether it's relationships or any other element of life, like, it really does make all the difference. And the one thing that I would add to that is a little shoot off of what both of you said, but when Lori, especially, you emphasized the why behind having that space for yourself, because otherwise you will seek those dopamine hits elsewhere. My husband laughs at me because, like, I've been caught when we're doing those embarrassing things, but I truthfully take time to smile at myself in the mirror. And I'm not being like, hey, good looking. Like, I genuinely, and I do this like more than I realize. And I think that's why I've been caught, is like, look myself in the eye. And when you actually look in your own eyes, you almost get freaked out for a moment, because like, you actually see yourself. And I think if you're hearing my tone, you get what I mean by that. You actually see yourself. And I often I have actually, like, verbalized being like, I love you. Like, we're doing this. Like, we got this kind of thing. And sometimes it is even just a smile, one-to-one. And I'm like, that out of any relationship in this world is the most important. And I think when you pare it down, it's not just for yourself to be able to thrive to whatever your purpose is in this life and to get the most juice out of it, as we like to say. But I think it's that reminder too, that we are really connected. We don't quite understand the whys behind all the things. We don't even know why we're here in the first place, but we do know that at the end of the day, we're all very connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like when we have that moment to look ourselves in the eyes and connect with ourselves, it's that then we can use to connect with other people. I know that sounds a bit woo-woo, but
no, it's not woo-woo. You know, it's funny. So we are also connected so much that I have to bring up a movie right now that's out actually on Netflix. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet. It's called The Immaculate Room.
No.
Okay, we should all watch it and do a movie assessment at the end of it, because it is like a whoa to the moment. And the premise of the movie is that these two people, a couple, get put into one giant room that's all white.
I saw the preview. Yes.
And if they can get, make it through in, I think 50 days, they get $5 million. And there's little aspects to it that bring up self-love, the importance of the things that are meaningful to you, like boundaries and challenges, and then relationships and friendships and where that goes and how we treat each other. This movie is like, it's kind of hard to watch because you're like, oh, that's kind of cringe. And, I can't tell who I'm supporting here. And I don't really know how to feel about it. But absolutely watch that movie and just tell me what you guys think of it. Cause I was like, whoa, this is cool. This is good.
Oh, that's exciting.
Like a book club, but not.
Let me know what you guys think, because it reminds me of relationships and breakups and the things that are important to us. Yeah.
Well, I know we just rolled into this, but I'm curious if anyone's procured a quote, because I just fired one up here.
Yeah. Wait, I got one maintenance to
oh, yes.
That every time, just be aware of this, is that, and this is from my personal experience, the longer when you have that feeling of knowing where like this, I don't think this is right, but the part of you that wants it to be right keeps pulling you forward, and you shush that other part, which I've been there. The longer that you continue down the road where you're not meant to be any longer, you chip away at parts of yourself, because you have to keep lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Lie to yourself and you're dishonest with yourself. You chip away at the parts of yourself that want or blocking parts of yourself, if nothing else, that are trying so hard to live in truth, to rise up, because you can't kind of do both.
No,
you can't keep expanding while you're lying to yourself. You can't, and it ends up being a certain state of delusion, right? And the longer that you continue down that route, and the longer you chip or block away at yourself, a lot of times, many of the times, it's inevitable that it will end. Yeah. And the longer that you stay in it and it ends poorly, or because it usually does end very poorly when you stay in for too long, which we referenced earlier. But the more important thing that I kind of want to highlight is that you now have to do all this work to all those parts of yourself that you chipped away at and blocked. And now not only are you going through the heartache of it, but you're twice or three times or four times as lost within it, because you had denied yourself and you stayed in that state. There is repercussions for that. There are consequences for staying in a state of denial, for continuing in a state where if I can just hope it, if I can just wish it, if I can just force it, and you do that month after month and year after year, there is big consequences. And if those consequences are, you're like, I can accept that, okay. But you got to be real with yourself that is what is on the line, because that is what is the truth. That is what is on the line of like your self, your true self is on the line. Because if you're going to stay in this space with this person and continue on, and I'm not saying where you're at like, your peaks and valleys and you're working things out and because like nothing's perfect and you're always going to go through those things. But that, that knowing where you're just like, nothing about this feels good. Yeah. Not really. Like I watched it in real time in my family. I've experienced it real time. I've watched it with friends. I watch it to this day happening with friends, and it hurts your heart, but you can't make they're in it. It's their choice. But that's the only thing that I'd say is like, know what the consequences are and be real with yourself. Whether or not you choose from there, like all the love and blessings, but like be honest with yourself of what the consequences are. And if you're willing to actually, is that worth that to you? And it might be to some people. And I know some people that are like, yep, that is worth it to me. Like I've said out loud, and I'm like, all right, and that's okay. That's then their choice and their journey. But
and I think one thing as well is like, if you don't rectify that with yourself, then you're bound to repeat it as well. Like life's going to keep serving up the same lesson in different ways, but it will keep presenting itself 100%. Until you're like, oh, I mean, you get sometimes completely pigeonholed where you're like, I actually need to look at this. Like it can be such a monumental lesson if you decide to keep ignoring, right?
It's crazy. Like you guys have actually, and I mean this like wholeheartedly, have totally in a moment of feeling like, I don't know if I can keep down this mental path that I'm on unless somebody jumps in right now without even saying it. You guys, both of you in separate times, like when I was going through that stuff with my ex and you came and slept over, Lori, like I didn't even know you.
No, we really didn't know each other.
I didn't know you. And I was like, I feel uncomfortable, but for some reason, I absolutely need this person here. I have no idea. You like literally got like changed in front of me. And I was like, who is this bitch? She's just coming in here. And we had a laugh and we had a hoot. And I didn't realize how badly I needed you to be there. And it set the precedent. And Chrissy, like life has been so wild on so many different aspects. And we've commented before that I've been able to pivot so drastically. But the things that you say in a text message is so meaningful. And a lot of people have absolutely said super supportive things throughout time. And it's usually these quick conversations and it's nice. It doesn't always give me that feeling of like, okay, I really am doing something so important here. And it does feel like I've really succeeded. And the text messages that you have sent I like look at that and I'm like, does this person exist?
Yeah, I totally agree. I've got those.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm just like, wow, I really fucking needed that. And so, and before in life, I thought the friendships are so cool and so awesome. And sometimes I always felt like I had to like show up when I didn't really feel like showing up. And in these friendships that we've created, I'm just being me in my day-to-day. And these people are just being them in their day-to-day. And we're fucking flowing. And it's cool. And if nobody out there at this moment that's listening to this has had that yet, it's fucking coming. Because like you said, Chris, there's a billion people out there. There's plenty of friendly fish in the sea. And it's just, we jive. And I love that. And I'm so thankful for it. And there doesn't need to be a lot. It can just be, even if it was just one of you, it would be meaningful. But I just think, damn, these friendships, I'm so blessed.
It's life changing.
Back at you.
Yeah.
Completely feel the same way.
I am going to end us with a quote.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it.
Oh gosh, there's like two that I really like. I'm actually going to go with this one.
Okay.
You were born to be real, not to be perfect. And I chose that one merely because of what we just said, because you nailed it, Richelle. All of us showing up real, you get what you get in any given moment, I think has laid the foundation for exactly what you speak to, that other level of connection with another human.
Big.
All right, my friends. Well,
okay. Love you a long time.
That is your motivation.
All right, folks. Well, if you didn't know, that's your motivation. You've just listened to the Motovation Podcast with your host, Chrissy Van, and me, Laura Joy Kingwell.
Thanks for joining us along the ride. We've got new episodes dropping every Monday, and we're all about community. So follow us on Instagram at Motovation Podcast and visit our website at themotovation.com.
And in the meantime, tanks full and full throttle.